If you sell a software tool and it's not particularly expensive, and you've looked at hiring account executives in the United States over the last few years, you're probably wondering, how on earth can companies afford to do it, right? And what I'm going to share with you is just why a lot of the conventional kind of wisdom you're going to hear is wrong, and the math that you need to be running instead. So first things first, it's expensive to hire people in the US, right? If you're paying someone an $80,000 base salary, you're at about $120,000 fully loaded. That's before we add in commissions. Add those commissions in, we're probably closer to about 200K. How can you justify this when you're selling a product for $300, $400, $500 a month, something less than $1,000 a month? And why can companies like Ramp and Deel have these large sales teams and seem to be growing really, really well? You know, Deel just announced that they're profitable, that they're growing at 70% year over year, and they're already at $800 million in ARR. Well, the answer here is that they're looking at MRR usually, not ARR. Now, this is monthly recurring revenue, not annual recurring revenue. The numbers that you need to work through here are really clunky and they're very unintuitive, which is why people get confused. So let's imagine for a minute, you're selling a product on a monthly plan and you're setting quotas at $10,000 a month. That means that you need to sell $10,000 of new business in January, you need to sell $10,000 of new business in February, and so on and so forth. So let's say that quota is hit every single month for the year. How much revenue would you bring in over the course of that year? Well, there are actually two answers to this, and I'm going to bring up a spreadsheet in just a second so that you can see this. But if you went by the calendar year, you would have brought in 780K. And if we assume that every single account sold sticks around for a full year, that year's effort would have brought in $1.44 million. So let's take a look at this, right? So year one, you know, we've got our January, right? But then we need to remember that this is recurring revenue. At least in theory, these accounts should renew. The $10,000 we got in January should also turn into $10,000 in February, so on and so forth, right? So if we look at all of these numbers for the year, we have $780,000. But if we look at something that was sold in May, well, we're only going to collect some of the money this year, but we're also going to collect it through next year, right? And so if we look at all of the money sold kind of over the year, which is really collected over about 22, 23 months, we get 1.44 million. And I know what you're going to say, right? What about churn? And yes, you're 100% correct. If you are going to run this sort of model, net revenue retention, your upsells, your cancellation rates, watching these things like a hawk is extremely, extremely important, because churn can make this model extremely profitable, or it can totally destroy the model, right? So if you're able to bring people on, you don't have too many cancellations, you have a lot more upsells than you have cancellations, you're winning. If you bring people on, they stay on the platform for 2 months and then they don't pay again, this is probably not going to work for you at all. The second thing that you need to think about with this sort of model is that you need a real velocity of booked appointments on people's calendars. If you're doing deals at $500 a month, then you need to close 20 new customers every single month to get our $10,000. That's a new deal roughly every single workday, which means you need a marketing machine that can deliver a full calendar of 3 to 5 demos every single day. Now, the salespeople that you're hiring aren't going to be keeping the SaaS standard of 20 to 25% of what they bring in. Their OTEs are much more likely to be somewhere in the range of 120 to 160K. But again, these people aren't filling their own calendars, so you're able to get away with a far less experienced sales team. And there's a hidden upside to all of this as well. Most people in the SaaS world aren't doing this math. So you'll often have interviewers, they'll hear a salesperson say, hey, I've got a quota of $6,000 a month or $8,000 a month in MRR. They are not running those numbers at all, and they will disqualify a really good candidate. So just something to keep in mind. Don't make that mistake, because you will be rejecting great SMB candidates. But that is how companies are actually able to make SMB account executive roles work. Now, if you are a founder, I have a video to your left that is going to be about how to hire your first sales rep. If you are a salesperson yourself, take a look at the video on the right. This is how I would take advantage of just common biases that salespeople have if I were to sell them a crappy role. So just things that you should be avoiding. Either way, I look forward to talking to you soon. Cheers.